This thing over here is the Zingyou, if I pronounce this correctly, but I do have a reputation of not pronouncing things correctly. The Zingyou BM-800. And at the time that I bought them, they were $22. Not 2,200, 22,000, no, $22. And I want to know if they are any good. Now, judging the quality of a microphone and comparing the quality of a microphone is very difficult. So I thought about this for a long time on how should I actually, review these microphones or compare them. And I couldn't find a single way to do it without any potential commenters saying that I'm doing the comparison wrong. So what I've chosen to do is actually make the comparison as unfair as possible so that everybody at least has a reason to comment about my comparison. So I'm comparing these with professional vintage microphones. This is an original U47. Not only comparing them with U47s, I'm also comparing them with other microphones. Now, before I want to get started on this, I want to say a small thing about the U47. I showed a U47 in a previous video of mine like a year ago or something, and a lot of people were complaining about the Telefunken badge on it. I want to turn around this microphone and show you guys that this is indeed a Neumann microphone. Both Neumann and Telefunken made these microphones, and Telefunken put a Telefunken badge on it and Neumann put a Neumann badge on it. Right now Telefunken Acoustic is the new Telefunken brand, but they've got the logo and the microphone design, but those microphones aren't anything near these ones. And I will prove this someday. Now, I bought these microphones myself for my own money. First of all, they aren't that expensive. And second of all, I want to do this more in the future, buying products myself. This way I can really be fair about my opinion. And I'm not being backed by a manufacturer that wants to check the video, and I don't have to be kind. The way that I want to compare them is by recording a song. A full song with drums, bass guitar, like an amped bass guitar, grand piano, acoustic guitar, and of course vocals. Now, normally you cannot use a song on YouTube because of copyright. So what I did, I went to Sound Vision Studio and I asked George, the owner, who is also a very great musician, to write a song on the fly. So that's very cool. We've recorded all those things with the microphones from Sound Vision Studio and these Zingyou ones. So yeah, let's take a listen at that comparison. So we started the session with recording the drums. Now, recording drums, 2 microphones isn't enough. So in order to make it a whole song, we also used the extra microphones for the whole drum song. Where we did the comparison between the, well, we called it during the session the cheap microphones and the normal microphones, were on the overhead. Now, the overheads were mic'd with KM-84 microphones. Those are the vintage ones from the KM-184, like there's an extra one in front of them. I tried to align the membranes with each other. These things are always difficult. Now, let's first solo the overhead and show you how it sounds. Now that's a huge difference, and if I could describe the difference, then the Neumanns have more three-dimensional sound, and of course sound is just one-dimensional actually. It sounds like there's more depth into it. Now I'm pretty surprised by the performance of the cheap ones, because they don't sound like a Neumann, but they do have a certain sound that could be nice for some genres. It's not bad. It's a more crushed sound, and that isn't necessarily bad on drums. And I was actually expecting that the capsules couldn't take the amount of decibels coming from a drum kit, because this was actually recorded pretty loud. Let's put this into the total drum sound. So this is all directly coming from the preamps, apart from the reverb. I'm not doing any mixing on this. Now let's switch. Now this is where the difference gets smaller. So on drum overheads, not bad, not bad. Now the next thing that we recorded was bass guitar. We recorded it in 3 ways, just because that was cool. We recorded it through a DI. So this is the direct sound from the DI. Now for most recordings we just used the DI sound, but I cannot put a microphone in front of a DI and expecting some sound. So we used a very big bass guitar amplifier and we recorded it with a D12. It's written incorrectly. The 112 is that annoying thing with that green thing that nobody wants to use. We used the original one, so the square one. Now I know this is an unfair comparison because that's a dynamic microphone and these ones are condenser microphones. Who cares? So this is how the bass sounds on the amplifier. Now compared to DI, because this is just interesting. Like that. And this is the cheap one. The biggest difference in the sound over here is actually the difference between a condenser and a dynamic microphone. Again, I'm pretty surprised that it could handle the amount of sound pressure on the membrane, because the bass amp also wasn't at, you know, a pussy level. It actually was pretty loud. Here is where things get interesting, because the next part we recorded was actually a grand piano. If you want to do a torture test with microphones, you should record a grand piano, because it's a very sensitive instrument and it's super clear to hear where these microphones fall short. Now the microphones we are comparing them with are 2 U47s. The placement was a bit more distant from the Grand, and you can hear some crackles from George, who is playing it, who is, you know, he wasn't very quiet, but that also wasn't the point of this video, to make a super silent recording. It was to demo the microphones. So. I love grand piano, by the way. Let's switch. Let's switch again. Now that's... Now that's a very large difference, which is of course expected. I mean, what do you want me to say about it? You can pretty clearly hear the differences in character between you know, a very high-end microphone and, you know, the cheapest they can make. Another interesting thing, and this is super interesting also, was the acoustic guitar. Now we recorded the acoustic guitar with a CMV microphone, which is a normal microphone, and it's using the same capsule as the U47. It uses an M7 capsule. Let me show you this. Now let's do the same part with the other microphones. Now Now on both parts you can hear the slides, but on the CMV, the slides, the string noise, on the CMV they are way more mellow, whereas on the cheap microphones they are pretty painful. Now the last thing are the vocals. Now what I was thinking is I'm going to do some, I've just closed the door. George is right now writing the last piece of lyrics for this song, and I was just wondering, and what I want to test is giving him both microphones, like separate from each other of course, but switching which signal he is getting on his headphones to see if that affects performance. And that's of course a very relative thing and it's very difficult to determine, but still I want to try to see if his performance could be altered by the sound that I'm feeding him back through his headphones. Now we're using Aviom in the studio, like this. He has channels to choose from, and I don't know, maybe I think 12, I will give it back to 12 on him, but I can change what is going into 12. So for one take I'm going to give him the U47, and for the other take I'm going to give him the cheap microphone, but I won't tell that to him to see if he, well, I think he notices it, but to see if his performance can be altered by choosing a microphone. Maybe interesting. So, right now he's listening to the cheap microphone. I am not sure if he, well, I think he notices it, but he thinks we're sound checking. En dan doen we een handje.
Het is u. Die wil ik. Ik wil deze. What you wanted. Zit die ook op 13?
Ja, ik had gewoon 13 geswitcht, ja. So I'm not sure if that came across on video, but he just one note and he said, whoa, this is the U47. So that's the amount of, but that's also what we're expecting, of course. I mean, the price difference is 3 zeros or something. 4? No, 3 zeros in price difference. I mean, what do you expect? But I just wanted to test it. The vocals consist of a lead vocal. So that's this one, and for the cheap microphone that's this one. One doubling and a crap load of backings. Now one of the things we did with the arrangement is we made the first verse, or actually the only verse because it's a very short song, we made it an octave lower. Just to test how that would perform on you know, cheaper microphones compared to an expensive U47. Let me show you this.
Anyway, you should do what you wanted to.
Now that's on the U47, and this is on the Zingyous.
Anyway, you should do what you wanted to. Every day there's a chance and a choice for you.
It's a big difference. Now here we are going into a higher phase.
Just blame yourself and save yourself. You are now the only one to fool yourself.
Switch again. So that's very interesting, and you can hear that this sounds way more MIDI, and this really needs some EQ. Now, what we are actually experiencing is something called the proximity effect. Now, the proximity effect means that the closer you get to a microphone with your voice or with a sound source, the thicker a sound is. So a microphone will sound different at different distances. For this recording, the microphones were actually a bit further away from the vocalist, in this case George, because I wanted to have an equal amount of sound for both microphones. I mean, if I'm singing directly into this, then the U47 would be over here. So we needed a bit of distance. And what you can hear in the recordings is that the Zingyou is very sensitive for proximity. So if you plan on recording with these things, try to be as close to it as possible. Alright, so now we are going to do a comparison. of a complete mix on all the places that I could switch the high-end microphones and all the places where I could switch the cheap microphone. Now again, but with the cheap ones. Okay, and now the vocal part. Now the interesting thing over here is also that the levels are the same. We gained it on the same setting so that I had the same amount of VU. The faders are also at the same place in the session. So the U47 punches through the mix way easier. Now here on the oohs, on the ooh sound, you can really hear the difference. You can really hear an interesting difference. Now, if you ask me where the difference may lay, it's not here, it's not in the sound, it's over there. It's you can the feeling that if you listen to the high-end recording, there's feel and soul in it. Whereas with the cheap recording, it's just sound. It's not that no depth, nothing. Now, is this thing a bad microphone? No, actually, I'm pretty surprised by the quality considering the price. Now, on to the conclusion.
You're the only one.
What the fuck?
To fool yours.
I'm happy I bought the U47.
Now, the thing that you are expecting from, well, not me, but you are expecting in general, that I'm going to burn this thing down to the ground, not only by talking, but even, you know, throwing it outside and, you know, putting it to fire. But I'm not going to. My conclusion is different. The incredible low price of this microphone, of course, justifies the reason why the sound quality isn't, you know, as good as those expensive microphones. I wasn't expecting that, actually. If that was the case, then, you know, I would have 100 of these right now. Now, what it does take away is the reason for not delivering sound quality. And I mean that in a demo way. If I work with external musicians or vocalists, I get demos in very, very poor quality. Most of the times they just, you know, sing it through their iPhone or you know, record it through their laptop microphone or something. And that quality is really, really bad. And of course, I'm professional. I know it's a demo and I can listen through that. But if you deliver a demo with a 10 or 20 times improvements of sound quality, which you will get from this one compared to that shitty tiny microphone thingy in an iPhone, you will at least look and sound much more professional. This thing costs $22. There isn't a single reason for anybody anymore to deliver crappy demos or even certain parts of productions, because as you've heard, sometimes it performs pretty well. Now, another conclusion that we can draw that is less about these microphones but more about microphone techniques in general. These microphones only perform at certain instruments and at certain parts of the music. As you've heard on that vocal, on the lower parts it sounds really cheap, but on the lead vocal, when it gets a bit higher in pitch, it performs pretty well. That's where the biggest differences in those microphones are. With a U47, you almost always know that the sound is right, that it can handle it, that it's okay with it. And that's the reason why these super expensive microphones are in those big studios. They need to be all round, and of course they need to deliver a way different quality level than you know, our home studios, and you know, it's what you're actually expecting from them. So anyway, that's my conclusion on these cheap microphones. Now, what I'm going to do with these microphones is I don't have a use case for them. Now, I'm not Glenn, so I'm not going to destroy them. I'm actually going to give them away. Because I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of people out there that can really use this. And if I would destroy them, I'm only contributing to creating more waste. And I don't want to do that. That's, you know, silly. I'm going to box them back up in the original box together with the original stand, a pop filter. There's even a small USB interface together with it. And I'm going to give it away to 2 of my patrons. So, if you aren't a patron already, I highly recommend subscribing to my Patreon page. It will be linked over here in the outro, so please keep watching. I will create a post on Patreon a few days after I've released this video. And then you can comment on that post if you really want to have the microphone. And I'm going to use a random name picking algorithm for that. I'll film the process and post that on Patreon as well. So you at least know it's fair, and I will then send it to you wherever you are around the world. So if you want it, I can also sign it, but I don't know if that's a thing. Another thing that will be available on Patreon for the $5 patrons are the files of the original session. They are available right now on Patreon. I'll link Patreon over here. Check it out over here. Another thing you can do if you don't want to do all the Patreon stuff, you can keep on watching my videos by subscribing or checking another one of my videos over here. Thanks a lot for watching this bit longer video, and I will see you guys again in the next one. Bye bye.